Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Welcome back to Business Innovators Radio. I'm your host, Frank Felker. You know, many people have considered dabbling in real estate investing, but were put off by stories of nightmare tenants, vacancy problems, high maintenance costs, any number of other issues that keep landlords lying awake at night. But today's guest, Martin Saenz of Second Chance Funding, is taking an entirely different approach to real estate investing, and it's generating high returns for himself and his clients. That approach is purchasing mortgage notes. If you've heard of this type of investment, or maybe even considered purchasing mortgage notes yourself, but were put off by what seemed like a mysterious way to make money, you're going to be very interested to hear what Mr. Saenz has to say. The author of the upcoming book, Mortgage Note Investing Made Easier, Martin has developed a formula that virtually anyone can follow to profit handsomely, while at the same time helping distressed borrowers stay in their homes. Martin Saenz, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I appreciate you coming in, and I think what you have to say is going to be of great interest to my listeners. Tell me, right off the bat, we kind of have to do a definition of terms. What exactly is a promissory note, and how does it differ from a mortgage?
Well, Frank, a promissory note is essentially an IOU that promises to repay a loan, whereas the mortgage or the deed of trust is a document that pledges the property as a security for that loan. So also, one other thing is that the promissory note gives terms for repayment. So it includes things like the name of the borrower, the property address, interest rate, late charge fees, the amount of the loan, and the term of the loan.
I see. And so at what point or how might this promissory note have been created in the first place?
Well, when someone went to their mortgage company or bank to take out a home loan to purchase a property, they, at that point, promissory note and a mortgage or deed of trust was created.
I see. So the mortgage is not actually the obligation or agreement to pay. It's just, as you said, it pledges the property against the obligation. And the promissory note is kind of like the loan itself, if you will.
Yes.
Okay. So you purchased distressed promissory notes, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
What does it mean when a promissory note is distressed?
Well, it means that the borrowers are currently in default. So the mortgage note is considered a non-performing mortgage note. So typically, if the mortgage note is 90 days or more past due, it's considered a distressed mortgage note.
I see. Okay, and so being that it's 90 days past due, it doesn't sound like a like a great investment. So why is it that an investor like yourself would want to buy one of those?
Well, from an investor standpoint, if you purchase one of those mortgage notes, you become the bank and receive all the rights of the lender. And moreover, you're buying that mortgage note at a discount. So when you do start to work with the borrower, it can be a highly profitable scenario for the investor.
Okay, and why would a bank be willing to sell the note at a discount? And can you give me an example of a discount?
Oh, sure. The banks are heavily regulated, and they have a lot of requirements to write off bad debt from their balance statement. And what happens is sometimes it hampers their lending ability when they have this toxic debt on their books.
Oh, I see.
So what banks look to do is they look to offload that toxic debt and also sell it off to recapitalize, but also to free up lending, which is what their main line of business is to lend. The other thing is that banks are not in the real estate business, so they really dread long, dragged out foreclosures. And the last thing the bank wants to do is obtain that property because they're not in the real estate business.
The dreaded bank-owned property.
Yes.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, and I can see why a banker would want to get this off of their balance sheet, and I understand everything that you just said. You made that very clear. So, can you give me an example of the amount of a discount that you might see? So, let me just say, for example, use round number like $100,000 loan, and I don't know what the loan to value would be or what the value of the house would be, but what kind of a discount might an investor be able to purchase that at from a bank?
Well, currently, as we stand here in February of 2017, for a first mortgage note that's in default, you're looking to pick that up anywhere from 40 cents on the dollar to upwards to 70 plus cents on the dollar. For a second mortgage note, you can pick those up. Probably the range is more like 20 cents on the dollar to 45 cents on the dollar.
Wow, that's amazing. And what are the factors that determine what that discount amount is going to be? What makes it a more highly discounted note to be able to purchase?
Well, on the first mortgage note side, obviously the fair market value determines a great deal what the discount is. You can find, if you take the low end fair market value property of say $20,000 to $50,000, that's considered a blighted property by a lot of note investor standards, and you'll receive your highest discounts off of properties that have the lowest fair market value. If you operate in the $50,000 fair market value range up to $120,000 fair market value, then your discount decreases, or the price increases for that note, and as the price increases above that $120,000 mark, the discount decreases, prices increase.
When you say fair market value, do you mean the value of the property?
Yes, the value of the property. Some other factors that come into play is the property owner occupied? Is it a rental property? Is the property vacant? What's the condition of the neighborhood that the property's in? How is the school district? What's the crime level like? So there's a number of factors that come into play, as well as from just the property standpoint, how's the condition of the exterior? Because oftentimes the condition of the exterior will tell you a great deal about how the condition of the interior is.
I never thought about that, but I bet there is a pretty direct correlation between those two elements. Well, this is very interesting, Martin. One thing occurs to me, though. How does this process help the borrower stay in their house? I mean, I can see how an investor might be able to profit through this process, but how does it help the borrower stay in their house?
Well, oftentimes I think it's important to note how the borrower got into this predicament. Oftentimes, they've had some type of life circumstance that's occurred, whether it's a divorce or some health related issue, a loss of job. There's a number of reasons why people get into the predicament where they fall behind on their mortgage. So when that does happen, oftentimes the banks will place them through a collection process that is very streamlined, and the bank will request full reinstatement of the loan to bring that borrower current. The borrower has to make up all the interest arrears that's owed on that mortgage note, plus late fees, any legal and collection fees, and that could be a substantial amount of money. And so it can really scare a borrower, because they don't have that kind of money to come up with up front. And the banks are very rigid, so they don't have much flexibility to make arrangements that work for the borrower. So when that goes on over the point of months to years, the borrower finds themselves in a situation where they don't know what to do. And so when I take over that mortgage note and I buy that mortgage note at a discount, I'm already starting off in a winning position, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to go to that borrower and make the needed concessions based on where the borrower is financially at the current time, to bring the borrower back to the table and come up with terms that work for both us and the borrower, getting them back on track. Almost in almost every case, I don't need all of the lump sum money of full reinstatement. I can work with them with a payment plan. I can lower their interest rate. I can lower their balance. I can lower their past due arrears that are owed, and I can do all that while still making a very healthy profit for myself and my investors.
Wow, that's great. That's really amazing. And so all of this is able to be done because of the discounting. Is that correct?
Well, I think it's a combination of the discount and buying right.
Okay. All right.
That
Well, in fact, we're going to come to that in a minute. So I think that's a great teaser because I want to know exactly what you mean by that. But we're not going to go to that right now. I wanted to ask you something else. How'd you get into this? How did you happen to find out about this in the first place, and then develop the level of expertise that you have now?
Well, my wife and I have been self-employed since 2005, and so through the course of being self-employed, we have invested into real estate, both on the commercial and residential area in the Washington, D.C. area. And essentially, we've become landlords of a number of properties. And through going through meetup groups and different RIAs in the Washington, D.C. area,
What is
we
a
got,
RIA?
oh, I'm sorry, real estate investment clubs.
Okay.
I got turned on to notes through one of the national speakers that came through town, and attended a 3-day session and essentially read every book that was out there on mortgage note investing, and went at it with my own capital and my own time, and kind of built things from there.
That's a really great story. So let's talk about that for a second, since you have worn and are currently wearing both hats of a landlord and a note investor. What are the advantages of being a note investor versus landlording?
Well, with with landlording, there's a lot more engagement. You're leasing the property. You are with leasing the property, you're running credit checks. You're doing background checks. You're collecting rent every month. And as issues arise with the properties, you're having to address those in a timely fashion. So there's a lot of ongoing service maintenance that's needed with.
The midnight phone call about the hot water heater that just exploded.
Yes. And I do want to say, there's a tremendous value in being a landlord, and I don't want to shortchange that area, because that is an area that my wife and I focus on. But I will say that when you buy a mortgage note at let me back up a second. When I buy a property, if I get a great stellar deal, I'm buying it at 80, 90 cents on the dollar, and then I'm putting it to market and getting it rented out. Whereas when I'm buying a mortgage note at 25 cents on the dollar, and I'm getting it to perform in getting favorable terms for the borrower, then I have a mortgage note that's performing for 30 years or until they pay it off. And there's relatively no maintenance other than setting it up with the loan servicing company, and I get payments ACH to my account every month.
That's nice. And no midnight phone calls.
No midnight phone calls.
Okay, well now let's go ahead and walk through the process of how this works. You have said that you make your money up front in this deal, And you've talked a little bit about the discount, but what exactly do you mean by making your money up front?
Well, I think that it's important to note before answering the question directly to really it's important for the investor to have a very detailed action plan in terms of what they want to project for ROI for themselves, return on investment for themselves, and how much commitment they want to put into the business. And some of the factors that are going to determine what your time and capital you're going to need for this business is, are you investing in first mortgage notes because that comes at a higher price tag than seconds, or do you want to do a mixture of the two? Also, how much capital do you have to invest? What are your goals? Are your goals to obtain the property at the end, or get the loan modified and help the borrower out? And also too, we'll go into detail later. Sometimes you help the borrower out by helping them move from the property. That's actually what they're looking for, and you can help them do that.
Interesting.
Also, what's your overall risk tolerance? And if you are borrowing money to invest in notes, what's the interest rate that you're borrowing at? So some of these questions that you want to ask yourself as you're building your action plan will determine how you make your money ultimately in notes. But to answer your question about making your money up front, you make your money when you buy. So note investing is very much a team sport, even though a lot of note investors work individually. They have whole networks that they work. They have relationships with. So, namely, who are you buying the note from? So there's retail platforms out there online. There's underground note selling opportunities and groups that form. So really understanding who the players are and what their reputations are is going to help you not waste a lot of time and effort as you're looking at note opportunities. Secondly, due diligence. You're getting a tape of notes, which is essentially a pool of notes. You're having to run due diligence on those notes before you make a purchase. You want to determine what the fair market values are. You want to pull credit. You want to do skip tracing to understand background of the borrower. Call county tax offices to understand back taxes, and do a number of other due diligence items to really understand what you have with each note. Because when you're buying these notes, you're buying them nationwide for the most part. So you don't have access to physically go inside these houses and meet with the borrowers. So you have to kind of all do it through over the computer and telephone.
Very interesting.
Also, when you're buying mortgage notes, you're receiving collateral files from the seller, and that usually includes all the allonges and assignments of mortgages, the mortgage note, the deed of trust, any accompanying documents of any correspondence with that borrower. Sometimes you get the credit report, and you want to read through all those documents to make sure. I mean, there's cases where the borrowers, failed to sign the mortgage note. Well, that may disqualify you from, ownership of having in ownership of a mortgage note against that borrower just because
Wow.
there's failed signatures. Or if you're missing certain assignments of mortgages, and those assignments you're missing them for are banking institutions that are out of business, well, you're not going to be able to get an assignment created on the back end, and that could cause legal complications if you have to go through the foreclosure process. And there's there's a lot of legal play in all of that.
And this is all part of the upfront step.
Yeah, this is all up front. So the objective or kind of my motto is to do all the necessary due diligence and understand that note as if you own the note before you buy the note.
I love that. That's great.
So what you do then is you have to combine everything you have, all the information that you've received um, through due diligence, through your review of collateral files, and you have to combine it all together and determine a potential exit strategy for each individual note and what type of return each exit strategy will bring you as an investor, and then roll it all up into one return on investment number that you can kind of see for yourself in buying that mortgage tape.
That's a lot of moving parts. That's a lot of things to keep in mind.
Oh, and dare I say that a lot of times you only have a few days to accomplish all this on a mortgage note opportunity, because normally they come out and you could have 3-4 days to run due diligence, and you have to literally come to the table, sign a purchase sale agreement, and wire that day or next day. So everything happens very quickly in the mortgage note industry.
Well, with that in mind, we need to move along as well. Is that basically wrap up everything relative to your upfront due diligence and trying to make sure you're buying the right note?
Yes, it does.
Great. So after you've purchased the note, then what happens? How do you get paid over time?
Well, there's a lengthy process to getting paid, and there's a lot of steps, and I think that's where a lot of the art comes into play. Generally speaking, I let anybody new to the industry or any investors that approach me about opportunities know that it generally takes about a year for something to materialize with a note tape portfolio. You may have a few notes that you have resolution, within the first few months, and then you have others that may take 18 months. So it is a long-term game. It's not a quick, rich.
Interesting. So are you saying that after you've wired the money, it may take a year to 18 months before you start receiving any residual income, or before the deal's even finalized?
Always up front. Always up front. When I buy notes, I buy whether they're for myself, for my own portfolio, or for others. I always run through the same process of analyzing that note or notes, and I would never suggest someone buying a note that I wouldn't buy myself.
Let me make sure I'm making myself clear with my question. You said 12 to 18 months. 12 to 18 months before what?
Oh, I'm sorry. Roughly 12 months before you start seeing a return on the investment.
In
before
the form
you start
of monthly
seeing
payments.
money come back in.
Okay, great. That's what I was driving at.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you have money coming in, and you mentioned something also about using a payment processing company. At what point would you consider switching over, or would you do that right out of the gate?
Well, I'll just to answer your last question, Frank. I think, and it's kind of tie into what you're asking now, is when you buy that mortgage note and you wire the funds, within a few weeks, typically you'll receive the physical collateral file. It's going to have all the original. It's going to have the original note. It's going to have the original mortgage or deed of trust. It's going to have all the assignments and allonges, and it's
what
also
is an
going to have.
allonge?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's a transfer of ownership to from the seller to yourself.
Okay.
And so what you'll do is you'll have to get your assignments recorded with a national recording company like Richmond Monroe. And you'll also get the loans set up for loan servicing with a national company. And there's a number of them out there. And what that does is, from the recording standpoint, when you record your assignments, you're recording them at the county level so that the borrower or anybody who wants to go through the county files can see that you have a legal claim, that you now are the new owner to this mortgage and note. And that's very significant from a legal standpoint.
I can imagine so.
And you're setting up loan servicing because you need to be in compliance with all the rules and regulations that are out there Whereas the loan servicer sends monthly statements, they send year-end tax statements, any new rules and regulations that pertain to their mortgage note, they're updated on. So it keeps things in compliance to use the loan servicer to back up your activities.
Very cool. And how much of cost is associated with that service?
Generally, you're paying anywhere from $15 to $40 a month for loan servicing.
Oh, I see. So it's a flat amount rather than a percentage of what the payment is or anything.
Oh yeah, it's a monthly fee that you pay.
Great.
So
So you're doing that right out of the gate, and I can see why you want to be in compliance and you don't want to run afoul of the IRS or any other federal agency by not collecting the money in the specified fashion.
absolutely. Next step is I'll send out a welcome package to the borrower. I'll let them know that, we've now purchased their loan. We very much want to get in touch with them and work out terms that are favorable to both of us. And I'll send them a few documents, like the assignment of mortgage, just to let them know, that we're legitimate and that we do have a legal claim to their mortgage note.
And then do you speak with them on the phone, or how does that go on then?
Yeah, there are a few states that you need certain licensing to reach out to the borrower. So knowing that's very important. But for the most part, in most states, you can go ahead and start calling the borrower and sending them mail correspondence and doing, you can also do door knocking. There's door knocking services that go and will knock on a borrower's door and hand the cell phone to the borrower and say, hey, look, your lender really would like to get in touch with you to, work out getting you back on board.
Interesting. That's a very interesting, it paints an interesting picture in one's mind. So, let's say that you've gone through that process and now you've worked out terms with the borrower and either they wanted to move out or they wanted to stay and you put together a deal that works for them and you're receiving your monthly payments. How do these relationships wrap up in the end? I assume at some point you're looking to get, in effect, a balloon payment to get this loan paid off because your revenue comes from not only the monthly payments, which include mostly interest or all interest, but also the final resolution of the payment of the principal. How and when do these relationships end?
Well, it's really up to you as the investor. That's the other reason I love the mortgage note industry is it gives you full control. If you're a player that's looking for long-term cash flow for 30 years, then you just sit and collect mortgage payments. That go against principal and interest. If you are, like a fix and flip note investor that just kind of wants to get in and get out, then there are numerous ways that you can sell that mortgage note paper as a reperforming mortgage note at a significantly higher price tag than what you bought it for.
Interesting. And so either one of those things, I guess the 30-year thing would be the 30-year thing, and that would require that the person stayed in the property and continued to make their payments. But if I guess let's say they decide they're going to sell the house, and then you're one of the parties that gets paid at the settlement table.
Absolutely. Whether you're in the first or second position, you have a legal claim to the property. The title company that's going to be handling the closing will contact me and ask for a payoff statement, and we'll provide that, based on what is owed on the property.
That's interesting. You've had a lot of success with this, Martin. What do you attribute that to? What is your secret sauce?
I think that I think that I would say that I love to help people. I always have. And between, my belief in God and, just my innate personality to want to help people, I see the mortgage note industry as a win-win industry in that I can buy something at a huge discount and I can help the borrowers come back to the table and get current. And what I find in a lot of cases is they were just looking for the right opportunity to come back to the table and get set up, get reinstated with their loan. They just didn't have anyone previously that would have any flexibility and would actually look at where their financial situation was and really look to help them. So it's great when I get Christmas cards from bars that I modify.
Wow.
It's great when I just get the thank yous, and it's really a reflection that I gave them terms that they could afford when they make their payments 1, 2, 3 years out. And, that to me is the ultimate,
Sure. Yeah.
testament
I could only
that, hey,
imagine.
I gave them something they could work with.
That's awesome. That really is awesome. And with that in mind, why do you think it is that more investors aren't doing what you're doing? Why don't more investors pursue this opportunity?
I would say that it's obviously a very niche industry. It's not out there in mainstream. You watch a lot of investing that surrounds real estate. Surrounds like the fix and flip model, all the TV shows, Flip That House, and the other shows that are out there.
We don't see a show called Buy This Note.
No. Yeah, you see, a guy with, 6-pack abs, and he's swinging a hammer, and he's got long, luscious hair, and,
Right.
and
That's
then,
funny.
everybody wins at the end. And, there's nothing sexy about the note industry. When I speak to a lot of potential investors, they always seem to understand how the numbers work, and they have a basic understanding of the process after I walk them through it. But where I find is they have a lot of trouble pulling the trigger because it is outside that typical real estate investment opportunity, or it may seem too convoluted, because there are a lot of there is a lot of knowledge that you really need to know to work through these notes. And so I think some people kind of get caught up on just the complexity of the industry.
I can imagine, and I certainly get that sense from what you've described throughout our interview today. And with that in mind, this is the whole reason you're writing the book Mortgage Note Investing Made Easier. That book is going to give investors all the information they need to follow your path. Why would they choose instead, even whether someone has read the book or not, to work with you instead of doing all the work themselves?
Well, I would just say that anybody that's has the time, and I mean full time, ability, has a good amount of capital to throw at this, and has the perseverance, should consider going into this industry and finding their way through it. But what I find is that most people have maybe only they want to be purely passive, or they only have a part-time amount of time that they can allot to this. They just want to understand the basics of the industry, but they don't want to get bogged down into all the minutia. And they also they just don't want to get into the day-to-day grind of what it takes to work out mortgage notes. But they do have capital. Those are the people that I connect well with, that generally come and I end up working with them.
Interesting. And so if somebody did want to work with you, or wanted more information about how your service might be able to help them, what's the best way for them to contact you?
They can send me an email at martin@notesandreos.com. That's MARTIN at NOTESANDREOS.com.
And I will put a link to that email address, as well as have it spelled out in the show notes for this episode. But let's say they send you an email. What should they put in that?
Well, if they could just briefly state what their objectives are with mortgage note investing, and And then what I'll do is we will evaluate those emails promptly and set up a phone conversation to discuss what it is they would like to do with mortgage note investing.
When you say their objectives, I'm sure everybody wants to make money with mortgage note investing. So how might their objectives, what other objectives might they have?
Really, the question is how they're looking to make money with mortgage note investing. Are they looking for short-term lump sum returns through mortgage note investing? Are they looking for long-term 30-year play? So how they're looking to make money through mortgage note investing will shape how our discussion will go.
So let's say they email you, they say they're looking for long-term cash flow to build up a college fund for their children or something. And then you call them back. How long of a conversation is that going to be, and what further information are you going to need from them?
The length of the conversation can be 10 minutes on up to however long it takes to figure things out. It's important if to have for the person to have an idea of what they're looking to invest, what type of capital level they're looking to come at this with.
Okay. And they'll be able to speak with you personally.
Absolutely.
Martin Saenz, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Frank.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.